because the Democrats were, in Jonathan Turley's word, if you were to tune in and listen, the average person would think these people are delusional. Number one, all they wanted to do is talk about Donald Trump, of course. Trump. Which, of course, this has nothing whatsoever to do with Trump, other than in the larger scale, we see a two-tier justice system. But what Democrats were trying to do is, of course, distract. To the point that you had some of these Democrat congresspersons, and I'm not going to air some of that. I do have a lot of great audio that I do want to air to give you a flavor of what took place yesterday. But they would ask a question, oftentimes about Trump, and when Hur would note, well, that wasn't the case I was working on, they would say, well, I'll tell you why. And then they would answer the question. They attempted desperately to get on the record and to have 4 sound bites. Them with Robert Hur there, that and Japaya was one of those members of Congress saying, "No, well, you exonerated him," to which he would clarify, "No, I did not. He is not exonerated." It's noted accurately that there was a degree of frustration on both sides. For Republicans, it was a frustration based off of the fact that in the report, he lists actions by Joe Biden that are a violation of law. But he decided not to charge him. Now, of course, we know why, and he said why. This was part of his duty, his responsibility was to explain that, and the explanation was that he did not have the mental capacity to go through a trial. And that a jury, in all likelihood, would just see a feeble, absent-minded old man, feel bad for him, like, we don't want to put, this guy, I mean, he's just he's an old man who's senile. And so for that reason, the decision was made, we probably won't get a conviction, so there's no point moving forward. That is a deal, for a frustration for Republicans that once again see in a report the listing of crimes, but then the decision not to prosecute. For the Democrats, they were just mad because he did his job, which is why they wanted to talk about Donald Trump. It is quite remarkable and kind of sad for the Democrats that they went from last Thursday giving a victory lap because Joe Biden did not fall off the stage or wander around demonstrating he did not know where he was. All he did was slur his words and act incoherent a couple of times. But to them, that was a huge victory. And so they're out there like, see, he's all ready for this. That we have gone from that in just a matter of days to where it's just once again a complete disaster for them. There were also a few things in the report that did not get talked about that make him seem even more senile than what has been brought up during the questioning of her yesterday. I don't even know what I do with all my stories. I guess I don't even have them here. I'll go grab them during the news. I don't know what I did with my stories. I can get them. All right. I must have left them on the desk. I still got I'm fighting it. What?
I said you're a hot mess.
I am a hot mess this morning. She's an even hotter mess. If you get on the cam, she's not in the studio right now, so I could tell you this. I don't know, she used the wrong contact solution or something, and it messed up her eyes. I mean, she looks like a train wreck. So if you watch the YouTube Live feed, which is sponsored by Springfield Wraps, you'll have a chance to see that. I've got this stuffy, I think it's the tail end of the flu or something. I don't know what it is, but the most frustrating part about it is the tickle in the throat. The throat hurting, which it did for a couple of days, I can push through that, but you get the tickle and you can't help but cough. It's very, very, it's annoying to you to listen to. It's annoying to me, and so I'm really, just a little discombobulated. So thank you very much. I was telling them about your eye, by the way. What a freak show they get to see if they tune in on.
Oh, it hurts so bad still. I don't know when it's going to stop.
Okay.
I don't know who came up with this peroxide contact solution. but really did a number on me this morning.
Oh, all right, so I don't know what I did with my stack because this is an old stack. I'll find it during the news.
I
See
was the
that
only one in
I
there.
know. I don't know what I did with it. Where did all
Boy,
my stuff go?
did you put it on? I mean, that was what was on your desk.
No, I know. This is stuff I didn't get to on Monday and Tuesday. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
have it
the
separated.
no, yeah, I know. I'll figure it
Oh,
out.
look, it's
Yeah, yeah. No, don't. No, it's all right because we've got news and everything. We're gonna get. This is a stellar start to a show this morning. Trump and Biden did clinch the nominations. Uh, so they are the presumptive nominees. Presumptive because, of course, it's not official until the convention takes place and the delegates cast their votes. But at this point, both of the candidates have the needed number of delegates in order to move forward. So now, of course, again, presumptive because, particularly with Joe Biden, they can always at the convention blow that whole thing up. And I suspect that there will be continued discussion and speculation as to whether or not that is going to happen, because here's what I suspect that between now, I think the State of the Union address, that while it was seen as a success for Biden, ultimately is not a confidence builder for Americans. That what we saw last Thursday was considered a success. Not to mention he was just angry and yelling and demonizing Americans and spent the first portion talking about other countries as if he's the Secretary General of the United Nations as opposed to the United States of America president. I think that was the high point of his campaign. I do not believe that there is anything that is going to take place between then and now that is going to do any better for him than the State of the Union. And by the way, the numbers have come out, and not only did it not help him, but he's actually come down a little in the polls post that State of the Union address last week. That being said, I suspect that there still will be discussions all the way up to the convention as to whether or not they're going to use that as an opportunity to make a last-minute change. I don't know that they will. But the speculation, the discussion, I think, will probably continue. Latest news update. The First Alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color Tin Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny 78 for a high today. 30% chance of showers, thunderstorms overnight tonight. Low of 61. 70% chance of showers throughout the day tomorrow. High near 77. Ooh, might even be humid. Friday mostly cloudy. High near 58. Post State of the Union poll, Biden's approval rating drops. Trump's lead grows. Latest Harris X Forbes poll, which was taken 3 days after last week's State of the Union address, in which Joe Biden yelled at everyone to get off his lawn. He saw his approval rating drop. Former President Donald Trump's lead tick up. It did not get a lot of notice, but there was the immediate polling that gets done, and it was like 65% of people had a positive view of it. And this was used by the media in order to claim that, no, this was great. This is what America wants. But those polls are always, I forget if 65% was the exact number, but they're always skewed by the political party that is supportive. And in fact, as high as that sounds, it was actually lower than what most presidents get. So it was an attempt by Democrats, I think, to not even necessarily convince everyone else that he did a great job, but it was more to convince themselves because they're frantic and they're desperate. They're worried. And they're panicking. And so this post-State of the Union poll that shows that his approval rating actually dropped while Trump's went up, and minimally, but still, that is certainly not in the right direction. All that being said, State of the Union addresses, they aren't lasting anyway. So it's yet another one of these instances in which there is so much focus that is put on it, the amount of residual impact that exists, particularly between the time of the State of the Union and the election, is completely, it just doesn't exist. That being said, in the week just prior to Thursday's State of the Union, Harris X Forbes released a poll that showed Biden's approval at 39, disapproval at 56. That is 17 points underwater. The Harris X Forbes poll of 2017 registered surveyed after the State of the Union speech showed that Biden's approval rating dropped down from 39 to 37, and his disapproval rating went from 56 up to 58. So that went from a 17-point underwater to a 21-point underwater. Before this State of the Union, Trump was up by 4. After the State of the Union, by way of the poll, up by 5. For, let's see here, five-way race. This is when you throw in Robert Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, Jill Stein. Trump was up by 4 pre-State of the Union address. That increased to 6 with all of those third-party candidates post-State of the Union address. And, there's some other a little less relevant numbers there about should Biden run, should Trump run for re-election. These questions that at this point are completely irrelevant. And as I mentioned earlier, I think what the State of the Union, that was the high point of his campaign. I don't believe that there are going to be any big he's going to have to speak at the Democratic National Convention. I believe between now and Election Day, the plan for the Democrats is that's the only other major event that he's going to participate in. Generally in the past, of course, what we're accustomed to is you have candidates that are desperate to have as many massive big events as possible. They want to be out there. They want to get in front of as many huge audiences as possible. They want on full display this imagery that they are on this massive concert tour, and everywhere they go, people are waiting in line for hours. And so what you have for the Democrats is, one, not only to prevent Biden from having to do that, but also prevent Trump from getting to do that. Their attempt is to completely control the presidential election so that you see as little as both candidates as possible. Because they know the more you see of Biden, the worse it is for Biden, and the more you see of Trump, the better it is for Trump. I do not believe that there will be debates. I just really don't believe it. Now, I'm not saying 100%. I'm 70 to 80% sure they will not have debates. By the way, not just for Trump, but let's not forget it is traditional that the vice presidential candidates also debate one another at least once, and I believe that will not happen either. I don't even know that they won't have for their only one other big event for Joe Biden, the Democratic National Convention to accept the nomination, if of course that happens. I don't know that won't be pre-recorded. I can all but guarantee you they are trying to figure out a way that they can potentially have it pre-recorded and it not be so I mean, they're going to know that we know why, right? But they still have to come up with some reason. So, whatever that could be, I suspect that they're trying to figure out, okay, well, can we say this? Can we say that? What reason can we give that the president had to do this in a pre-recorded fashion? Or maybe even not have him really do anything at all in terms of a meaningful speech, but have some sort of pre-produced video that just shows how wonderful he is and how the world depends on Joe Biden as being president, democracy is at stake, and then just a short little I accept this nomination pre-recorded message from Joe Biden. It would not surprise me if that is where the Democratic Party ends up with this guy. But outside of that I do believe that there's only one event that at this point they think we have to just get past that Democratic National Convention. That is the only big massive event that the vast majority of people are going to have some degree of interest in or at least watch subsequent to the event, in which Joe Biden could really mess things up. If we can just get past that, everything else, we won't have the debates. We'll say that we're not going to give Trump a platform for his hate, and whomever his vice presidential candidate is, we're not going to give that person a platform for hate and not do any massive events, and this is what we're going to see. Because they know, and we know they know, and they know that we know that they know. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Don't forget to join us Friday at Scramblers, Friday Roadshow, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. All right, now before we do some of the audio, and there's great audio, yesterday was not a good day for the Biden campaign and for Democrats. The diehard Trump is evil people, they're not going to be swayed no matter what. I think some people who they aren't really sure exactly what's going on, and they don't know whether or not Biden was corrupt, whether or not he's really senile, which I don't know how many people are still on the fence about that. But if those people do exist and they listened to the testimony yesterday, what they would have seen, desperate Democrats, and a report that said, yeah, Biden not only broke the law, but he lied during the deposition, during the questioning. He lied about things that they have proof of. There is, however, a few things that did not make it into the questioning, and I think because, well, frankly, there are much more important things. But when I read through some of this stuff, I found myself laughing, and because it is the personality of a senile old man. Benedict Smith reporting that. This is Yahoo News. A report into Joe Biden's handling of classified documents made headlines in February over claims about the president's memory. Robert Hur, the Justice Department special counsel, was investigating whether Mr. Biden should be charged for allegedly mishandling state secrets. However, the two men ended up discussing far more together. Over 2 days of interviews and a transcript that covered 268 pages, Mr. Biden discussed his time as president, vice president, a senator, a law clerk, and what he enjoyed doing in his free time. Now, mind you may think to yourself, now why would that stuff come up when this is a very serious investigation about the mishandling of, the illegal handling of classified documents? Well, because what you learn as you read through this is that Biden was just wandering at times, as if he forgot where he was. And there were numerous times in which Robert Hur very kindly had to rein him back in. He frequently, being Biden, joked and teased Justice Department lawyers, veered off into anecdotes, despite attempts by Mr. Hur to steer the conversation back to the classified documents. Mr. Biden also enthusiastically discussed his love of electric cars, architecture, and his wife, Jill, who was said to have been exasperated by his chaotic filing system. Now, here's some of the details as to the veering off course that Biden did quite frequently during these interviews. Mr. Biden surprised himself with an archery display on a trip to Mongolia in 2011, apparently striking a target from 100 yards away. At some point, for unknown reasons, the president veered off course, telling Mr. Hur that he's not a bad archer. He said, "I don't know if it was to embarrass me or to make a point, but I get handed the bow and arrow. I turned to the prime minister, handed it to him, and that poor son of a blank couldn't pull back." And Biden claimed, though, that he hit the makeshift target mounted on a bay of hails with a bow and arrow. This was another one of those
Truck driving stories.
yeah, truck driving stories, or hit a home run out of the ballpark, or it's a Walter Mitty story. Here he is in Mongolia, and the prime minister, the poor prime minister, poor son of a blank. He couldn't even pull it back. He couldn't. But I'm surprised Joe Biden didn't rip his shirt off and glisten in the sunlight to do this.
Yeah, and right as it was happening, an eagle flew over.
Oh yeah, this is a story, and this is an instance in which her's like, "Okay, Mr. President, let's get back to the conversation about the classified documents." At one point, President Biden joked with interviewers about the FBI finding pictures of his wife in her bathing suit while they searched his home in Delaware. Quote, "I just hope you didn't find any risque pictures of my wife in a bathing suit, which you probably did. She's beautiful," he said, prompting laughter sure at him, not with him. He then clarified that he was kidding, as opposed to no joke, man. The U.S. president often returned to the topic of FBI searches, claiming they knew his home better than he did. He also said this is one of my favorite ones. He veered off course and began explaining to her that he sees himself as a, quote, frustrated architect, claiming to have designed his lake house in Wilmington, Delaware. So now he designed his home.
The resume of this guy.
I know. This reminds me of George Costanza claiming he's Art Vandelay, he's an architect. So Joe Biden's there, and he's talking about how he, as an architect, designed his home in Delaware. He said, quote, I'm a frustrated architect, and if you went through, you probably saw all of those significant number of house plans that I've drawn. So evidently, I mean, we got a guy here. This is the behind closed doors that we keep hearing about from Democrats, apparently. This is the behind closed doors Joe Biden that is just running circles around everyone else. He's brilliant. And now I can understand when Mayorkas or Karine Jean-Pierre or Newsom or any of these other Democrats are like, I mean, I just was with the guy yesterday. You wouldn't believe him. Well, I mean, if he's a master at archery, and he's designing homes as an architect in his spare time, and he's got all these. We are really selling this guy short. We got to get a traffic update. More of the less focused on aspects of the transcripts that were released yesterday. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunshine 78 today, a slight chance of overnight showers, 61 for a low, 70% chance of showers through the day tomorrow, 77 for a high. Friday mostly cloudy with a high near 58. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs, and a 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty on most work. That's pretty nice. Can you find someplace that'll do it cheaper? Sure, you almost always can. But do they give you that 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty? One of the reasons that A1 is able to do that is because they are confident in their work, but they're also confident in the products that they use. Some places may buy on the cheap so that they can give you a cut rate. But a year from now and 10,000 miles down the road, if that part goes kaput, then you're paying for a new one and then the labor again. With A1 Custom Car Care, that 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty puts you to the front of the line to get taken care of should the unfortunate circumstance occur in which something goes wrong with that fix. And it does happen, and they know that. But they want to make it right, and they also want to diminish the likelihood it's going to happen, which is why they train their technicians and why they use better parts. A1 Custom Car Care for all of your car care needs. We're going to play audio coming up that is some of the more telling audio, if you will, from the testimony that was given by Robert Hur yesterday. However, there were a lot of things in the transcript that did not make the questioning for understandable reasons. On the Pyramid Roofing Talk and Text line, good morning. I really don't think Dementia Joe is going to make it that long talking about to the convention. Her only questioned him for 5 hours over 2 days. When you read the actual transcript, Joe is mentally gone, worse than even I thought. And I think that's what a lot of people are going to learn. Now, some of what we've already recapped here is that Biden kept wandering, and Hur kept having to try to bring him back in because he would just start talking about random things. Among one thing, he told the story about how he was on a trip to Mongolia, and he outdid the I guess it's the prime minister. Yeah, the prime minister when it came to archery, claiming that the prime minister couldn't even pull the bow back, but he hit the target right on. He talked about how the FBI probably found pictures of his wife in a bathing suit. He claimed during his testimony, for reasons that aren't really relevant to the subject at hand, that he was a frustrated architect, that he designed his lake house in Wilmington, and that the FBI probably saw all of those significant number of house plans that he's drawn up. He claimed that his wife had offered to pay for him to attend an architectural school in a bid to persuade him against running for the Senate. Quote, "I'm deadly earnest, not a joke." Now, that could be, Sarah had asked off air if we thought when they found these drawings that he claimed existed, if it was essentially a rectangle with a triangle on top, stick figures in front with an arrow pointing to it saying Joe. And that could very well be, which is why she's like, maybe you should go to architect school, honey.
We'll put this one on the fridge.
How is he drawing up? I'm not saying that a person can't be self-educated, but one, we're talking about Joe Biden here. But he is claiming that he drew, that his vacation home in Wilmington, Delaware is based off of his architectural drawings. He didn't even go to architecture school. Who do you take that to? Like, here, I want you to build this. They're like, oh, this looks up on the up and up. Sure. Oh. Mr. Biden repeatedly attempted to discuss cars during the testimony, at one point complaining he could only drive his vintage Corvette along his driveway. All right, honey, you can have the keys, but don't go past the end of the driveway. This is what you tell your 3-year-old when they're on their bicycle with training wheels or their tricycle. All right, I'll let you go. You can be in the driveway, but don't go past the mailbox. At another point, he attempted to engage the prosecutor in a discussion about electric vehicles, disregarding the special counsel's attempt to regain control of the conversation. Biden saying of electric vehicles, quote, "You know how it works. It's really cool. You step your foot on the accelerator all the way down until it gets to about 6-7 grand. Then all of a sudden it will say launch. All you do is take your foot off the brake. The transcript indicates that he then made a car sound. Saying, to which Mr. Herr kindly said, well, it's on my bucket list.
That's so funny you say that, because the entire time you were reading that, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if he was going to go vroom vroom, and
Well,
then you said that.
evidently he did. He made car sounds. Jill Biden apparently despaired over her husband's filing system, urging him to be more like former President Ronald Reagan. Quote, she wanted nothing to do with my filing system, he said. What? Having open boxes on the garage floor, classified documents? I can't imagine why that would be annoying to someone trying to keep your house tidy. At another point, he admitted, I wish I could say it was more organized. No, I'm not being facetious. I'm being deadly earnest. Joe used to say to me, you ought to be like Franklin Roosevelt or Ronald Reagan. I said, don't make me like Ronald Reagan, I joke. Every night, he'd come home and he'd write a diary about what happened that day, who he spoke to, classified, unclassified, just everything he'd write in it, and he kept it all. Mr. Biden also indicated, some of this stuff is just so random, that he's already started thinking about where to locate his presidential library. I wonder if he's going to draw up the architectural plans for that as well. He acknowledged, though, he had no idea where to put it. The library, which will contain records from his administration, is traditionally located in the president's home state. Mr. Biden said he was considering different locations, however. Quote, my recollection is that there are people competing. Oh. He said Syracuse University would like it. University of Delaware would like it. They want to do it down here in Washington. Two more components before we get to some of the audio. This is on the cutting room floor. This is some of the transcript testimony that did not necessarily get highlighted during the hearings yesterday. But I think, while on one hand it is humorous, on the other hand it is sad, because it shows a senile individual that is unable to focus and seemingly is unaware of the gravity of the situation at hand. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I don't know how much of this that you are going to hear, but we're sharing some of the transcript information that did not make the hearings yesterday, or at least in any significant way. Though we will play some of that audio coming up. Some of what we learned is that, well, largely Biden kept veering off, and in as kindly of a fashion as he could, kept trying to bring him back into focus. He told stories about his archery skills. He talked about his pictures of his wife in a bathing suit. Claimed that he designed the lake house in Wilmington, Delaware, that he considers himself a frustrated architect and claims that he has designed numerous homes. He started talking about electric cars at some point, asking Mr. Hugh if he knows how they work, and then in part of his description to Hugh about how electric cars work, he made car noises. He claimed that he doesn't know where his presidential library will go, that there are numerous different universities, there are locations that are all jockeying to house his presidential library. One of the text messages coming in, Nick, Joe could get his presidential library at Sesame Street with his buddy Cookie Monster in charge. Bob the Builder can help with the plans. Joe Biden also at some point decided to talk about how he, or when he decided that he was not made to be a lawyer. I'm going to read this word for word. Mr. Biden decided against pursuing a career in law after representing a client who lost parts of their penis in a fire. He encouraged the 23-year-old victim, who was injured working in an oil refinery because he was wearing the wrong pants, as a clerk in a Delaware law firm. He recounted, this poor kid is down a 100-foot vessel chimney, scraping the hydrogen bubbles off in the inside. He was wearing the wrong pants, wrong jeans. A spark caught fire, caught in the containment vessel, and he lost part of his penis and one of his testicles. Looking at the man's family after the trial, I realized, quote, son of a B, I'm in the wrong business. I'm not made for this. Now, what, you may ask, does this have to do with the issue at hand? Absolutely nothing. But this is Joe Biden. And Mr. Biden repeatedly forgot what a fax machine is. And called, while describing the layout of the library in his Delaware home, at one point, Ed Siskel, the White House counsel, supplied the word as the U.S. president appeared to struggle and referred to it as his copy machine. Mr. Biden said the library has 2 filing cabinets in it, and it has built into the walls a space for a copy machine, for a, what do you call it, when they send these, to which Mr. Siskel assisted him saying fax machine, to which Mr. Biden then confirmed, yes, fax machine. So we learned quite a lot about the president. Now, in seriousness here, not that that isn't, because it does. It shows a man. Listen, I don't know if you've ever had a family member that was in some sort of assisted living facility, largely because they were physically perhaps okay. You know, they're older, so they have the normal wear and tear. But they couldn't be trusted safely to live on their own because of their mind. I know I've been in that position when I was a kid. Oftentimes our youth group, we would just go visit nursing homes. And what oftentimes we saw was what was demonstrated by Joe Biden according to these transcripts during the testimony. Somebody that apparently they appear to forget where they are. They talk about these random things that are totally and completely irrelevant to the subject at hand, and you just sort of kind of try to get them back on track, and that's what Herr was having to do. Is it any wonder? I mean, not that it makes it right, but that he recognized that there was a real problem here with the sanity of this man. While at the, I mean, because we're all being told that he's perfectly sharp, he's the sharpest tool in the shed, and so forth. Now, there were 7 major takeaways. Just the news broke these down, and we will have, again, audio coming up. But 7 big takeaways from the report. Number 1, Biden willfully retained classified documents. This is not in dispute. He took classified documents, which is illegal. One other thing, I've got to remember to ask this of Congressman Burleson next week when we have him on. The SCIF is one of the, back before he was even vice president, apparently, that he was illegally taking classified documents. Now, the SCIF is this area that is supposed to be completely protected, and it is where information is provided to specific people in a manner that is highly secured so that no one else can know what it is. Now, during the Clinton years, Sandy Berger from the Clinton administration, he got in trouble because they caught him. He shoved some documents he didn't want people to see in his socks and tried to sneak out, and he got caught. I'm wondering, how did Joe Biden get that stuff out of the SCIF? You know, they keep referencing that he took it out of the SCIF, but I want to know, how did he do that? Because it's my understanding, and this is why we'll ask Congressman Burleson this question, because he's been in the SCIF before. You can't just walk out with it unless you deliberately attempt to hide it. And this is being discussed when it is brought up without making that point. That, you know, that it's not like when you walk out of the grocery store and you realize that there was an item you accidentally didn't pay for. You know, that's happened to a lot of us before. Like, oh, crap, I forgot. I didn't, you know, for whatever, however it happened. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about deliberately sneaking something out of an area that is supposed to be highly secure. Her also in the report noted that Biden was lying when he claimed in the news conference that he did not share classified information. That was absolutely not true. Biden did share it. He was lying. Biden's motive for retaining the classified documents were explored, including $8 million in book proceeds. What a shock that Joe Biden would violate laws in order to get a little money. Gee, where have we heard of that behavior before? Her insisted that his report did not exonerate Biden, despite Democrats trying to utilize that word over and over again, to which Her would note, I did not exonerate him. The intelligence community is completing a damage assessment on Biden's handling of the classified documents, is something that was also revealed. Now, I suspect that they're going to, whatever they write up as a report will be for political purposes. In all likelihood, it will be at the point in which, if the report does ever come out in a meaningful way, it's going to be done in order to make it look like, oh, well, but don't worry, he didn't do any harm. Prosecutors believe there was an effort to destroy evidence, and Biden displayed a hazy memory, confusion during the 2-hour interview with Her's team. All of these things were big takeaways. In the next hour, we will have some audio. The Pyramid Roofing Company Talk and Text Line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. All right, regarding Biden's testimony claim that he is actually an architect that designed one of his own home and many others. Pyramid Roofing Company talk text line. The house drawing was probably on an Etch-a-Sketch. And another saying the person who sent the text that Biden Library should be in Sesame Street should get the Text of the Day award. That was a good one. We will have some of the audio coming up in the upcoming hour. If you missed any of the show, of course, you can always catch it in the on-demand section at ksgf.com. There was a posting made by one of the characters. It was Anthony or Alex Carricker saying, hey, I can't stress this enough. And it was about foreclosures and how do not do that. That a lot of people, I think it's denial, and maybe you lose a job, you have an income issue, just inflation due to the Bidenomics that we're told are so wonderful, and you haven't been able to make mortgage payments, and you just sort of keep thinking, well, something magical is going to happen. And there's it's just odds are in this market, you can sell that house and come out ahead. You got equity in it, and you can save yourself from having that foreclosure. And it's psychologically, particularly if that's where your kids are and they've grown up in that home, that can be a very difficult thing, and it's sort of like admitting defeat. But the only thing worse than that, well, there are a lot of things worse than that, but one of those things that would be worse than that is having your home foreclosed on, and then forget about buying another new house for a long time. This, at least, is an option where you can then get your head above water and have an opportunity to purchase a new home again. So if you find yourself in that position, reach out to the Carricker team and let them know, hey, we're just in a bad way, and we need to see what options are available for us, and they will do that for you, and it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. All right, so there was a great deal of audio from yesterday's hearings, and from Republicans, it was a combination of reiteration of what was in the report. And for some Republicans, it was a great frustration trying to understand, given that in your report, you show that he broke the law. You showed that he lied about breaking the law. Yet, you're choosing not to charge him just because he's senile. And that, the dual justice system is at play here, and there's a great deal of frustration there. For for the Democrats, it was, let's talk about Trump, which is, of course, completely and totally irrelevant to this. As if, they aren't getting their satisfaction from the political prosecution in 4 different court systems right now. They have to take this venue, which is about Biden's illegal handling of classified information, and make it about Trump as well. Because that means everything that Biden did was okay, because Trump is a horrible person. I want to get the news here real quick, jump over to them, and then we'll go ahead and get some of this audio before traffic and weather. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. First Alert Forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks. Home improvements from Colorton Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny, high near 78 today. 30% chance of showers and storms overnight tonight. Low of 61. Tomorrow, 70% chance of showers through the day. High near 77, mostly cloudy. A high near 58 on Friday. One of the claims that Biden made during that press conference after the report came out was that he was exonerated. And the Democrats have continually claimed that he's exonerated. That is a lie. He was not exonerated. And in fact, he could not have been exonerated because that is not the job of the special counsel. The special counsel does an investigation and then makes a determination as to whether to charge or not to charge. And then the special counsel is required to explain why, whether or not the decision was to charge or not to charge. The decision, of course, was made not to criminally charge. The reasons given why, because he's senile. And, of course, here the Democrats, I get why they're upset. They do have a double-edged sword here that they're dealing with. One, they either have to acknowledge that that he's being criminally charged or that he's senile. Neither of those are necessarily great campaign themes. And so, of course, attack the messenger, talk about Donald Trump, and lie, including claiming that he was exonerated. And this is one of those points in which he attempted to get on the record the fact that he did not exonerate, despite the attempts by Democrats to do otherwise or to get on the record otherwise.
So this lengthy, expensive, and independent investigation resulted in a complete exoneration of President Joe Biden. For every document you discussed in your report, you found insufficient evidence that the president violated any laws about possession or retention of classified materials. The primary law that you analyzed for potential prosecution was part of the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793E, which criminalizes willful retention or disclosure of national defense information. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, that is one statute that we analyzed. I need to go back and make sure that I take note of a word that you used, exoneration. That is not a word that
I'm
appears
going
in
to
the
continue
report,
with
and
my
that's not part of my
questions.
task as a
I'm going to continue
prosecutor.
with my questions.
The
I know
judgment
that the
received,
term
I ultimately reached
I know
related to
that the
whether
term
sufficient evidence existed such that the likely
didn't-
outcome
you
would be a
exonerated him.
conviction.
I know
I
that
did
the
not
term
exonerate him.
willful
That word does not appear in
retention
the
has a
report, Congresswoman.
Mr. Hurd, it's my time.
That exchange sums up the Democrats' position on this. See, theoretically, though we're not naive, we understand what's going on here. And we understand politics are at play. But theoretically, these hearings are to gather information so that members of the committee can have the most informed grasp as to the truth regarding what's going on as possible. That is not what happens here. Instead, what you have are Democrats acting as the proactive defense for the administration. This is not supposed to be a committee that is partially populated with people whose number one goal is to get the person investigated reelected to the presidency. This is a separate branch of government. They are not supposed to be acting as Democrats who want to see their candidate in the White House, so they are going to do everything they can in order to cover up what the report found. They are supposed to be sitting members of Congress that are inquiring as to anything in the report that they may not necessarily understand, they need context on, they need a better understanding as to what, or, perhaps they find what they think are contradictions in the report, and so they want clarification. They're not, listen, I know it is political. I know it's politics. But this is supposed to be a separate branch of government in which a committee is populated with individuals that are seeking to better understand the situation in which a person occupying another branch of government is investigated for committing a crime in his capacity or outside of his capacity as an elected official, utilizing his capacity as an elected official in order to carry out the crime, and that is stealing classified information and passing it along to a person not authorized to see or have information about the classified information. And then, of course, the destruction of the evidence, which we'll get to coming up here in a moment. We're going to get a traffic update, have some more audio for you coming up here, including a bit of recognition in terms of analysis. We have Turley, we've got McCarthy, Andrew McCarthy, not Kevin McCarthy, and their assessment of this and some of the revelations as well. Now, we all know that if Donald Trump, if there was an investigation while Donald Trump was president of Donald Trump, and then the report was coming out, and he had his folks in the White House intervene and try and have the report altered, this would be called obstruction of justice, at the very least. And they would do everything they could to haul him off to jail. Now, this is something that it's not in dispute. Even the White House had to admit, because they got caught, that they tried to do this. This is an area in which I think Jim Jordan is asking about this.
Once you gave the report to the White House,
It's Jim Jordan.
They sought changes. I have one letter here that's addressed to you on February 5th. And they said, we're pleased that after more of a year of investigating, you've determined, they respond to the report. And then they disagree with they asked for you to change some of the things you had in your report, namely the fact that the president's memory was not very good. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But I also have two other letters. One on February 7th to Merrick Garland, where they raised the same concern. And then on February 12th, where they go to the DAG, Bradley Weinsheimer. You familiar with those?
I am familiar with those letters. Bradley Weinsheimer is an assistant or associate deputy attorney general.
Right. Associate DAG, the ADAG, right?
Yes.
And Merrick Garland, of course, is the attorney general. So yes, you're familiar with the fact that they went over your head?
They were certainly entitled to write whatever letters they wished to Mr. Weinsheimer and to the attorney general.
I just find that interesting. The White House they're communicating with you throughout this 1-year investigation, and then the White House says, "Oh, we're going to go to the principal's office, and we're going to talk about Mr. Herr's report."
This, as I mentioned, well, by the way, Herr, more than anyone that I've ever seen, did a fantastic job being completely diplomatic, despite the Democrats' attempt to try and make it seem as if he were a cheerleader for Republicans. In fact, there was a false report put out yesterday, specifically citing the name of somebody that works with Trump as coaching him beforehand, and that was why he resigned. And then there were numerous, this came up on the 5 yesterday, where Jessica Tarloff was making this claim, and everyone else on the panel was like, what are you talking about? She goes, well, it's in the Hill, it's in this, it's in this. And in the next segment, she had to apologize because it was retracted because it wasn't true. More fake news. And I thought it was absolutely perfect because it illustrates, not to get too far off the beaten path here, one of the problems we have with the media today, that Jessica Tarloff, who of course hates Trump, she's a left-winger, on there, what was her evidence that it was true? Well, that the Hill then reported on it, and CNN then reported on it, and because everyone else reported on it, that means it's true. And the initial reporting source ended up having to pull it because it wasn't true. Matt Gaetz had a line of questioning, and Matt Gaetz does a very good job of asking questions that illustrate the frustration of the average American. And he has 2 major points in his questioning. One is regarding essentially the double standard and why Biden gets away with things that they demand Trump be put in prison for, even though it is apples and oranges, because Trump, of course, is the person who can declassify documents, while Biden wasn't.
Once you gave the report to the White House.
Yes.
Wrong audio, and let's switch over. Here we go. Matt Gaetz.
I think that seemed relevant to me is this ghostwriter, right? So the ghostwriter purposefully deletes this evidence that seems to be like show culpability of Biden's crimes, and you don't charge him. Why did you not charge the ghostwriter with obstructing justice and deleting evidence?
Well, for a number of reasons that are laid out in the report. But in brief, Congressman, yes, when we interviewed the ghostwriter, he did tell us, and I'm trying to get the exact language, that one of the things on his mind, one of the things he was aware of, was that I had been appointed special counsel and was conducting an investigation.
Right, so he didn't, just so everybody knows, the ghostwriter didn't delete the recordings just as a matter of happenstance. Ghostwriter has recordings of Biden making admissions of crimes. He then learns that you've been appointed. He then deletes the information that is the evidence, and you don't charge him.
That is reflected in the report, and one of the reasons...
Like, what does somebody have to do to get charged with obstruction of justice by you? If deleting the evidence of crimes doesn't count, what would meet the standard?
So, Congressman, as we state in the relevant chapter of the report, one of the things that Mr. Zwanitzer did not delete was transcripts of the recordings that he had created that included inculpatory evidence relating to Mr. Biden.
Oh, so if you destroy some evidence but not other evidence, that somehow absolves you of the evidence you destroy? Here's what I see. Zwanniger should have been charged, wasn't. Biden and Trump should have been treated equally. They weren't. And that is the double standard that I think a lot of Americans are concerned about. I see my time's expired.
Now, this is an area, rightfully so, that Republicans did have a great deal of frustration, and they seem to be satisfied that the report was very thorough, but it was the decision not to charge certain people, and to me, this also does not jive. And Matt Gaetz makes the point, but he moves on because of time constraints. The ghostwriter destroyed evidence. And that evidence was the audio of Joe Biden acknowledging that he had and he was sharing this classified information illegally. And when asked, why was he not charged with this? Well, because there was also transcripts. Oh, so you can destroy some evidence as long as you don't destroy all of it? And do you and I think that that applies to us as average citizens? We know it doesn't. I mean, can you imagine trying to use that defense? If you're trying to destroy evidence and you successfully do destroy evidence, your defense is, well, but I didn't destroy all of it. Oh, okay. This is, by the way, not too off the mark of this absurd notion that the reason that Biden shouldn't be charged is because he, quote, cooperated. Aside from whether or not he actually did cooperate, let's you and I try that sometime. Oh, I get pulled over because I'm swerving all over the road for drunk driving. I voluntarily do a sobriety test and fail. But I guess because I volunteered and I didn't put up any sort of fight, I should get off scot-free, right? Or I'm selling drugs and I got bricks of cocaine in the trunk of my car. I get pulled over. They say, do you mind if we check in the trunk? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Check it out, Jack. That means that I should not be charged for those drugs because I volunteered willingly with the investigation. That's how that works? Well, hell, the Biden rule is fantastic then. If you get caught committing a crime, just tell hey, yeah, go ahead, search, whatever. Because whatever you find will be irrelevant because I cooperated. That is what we're being told by the Democrats. You know and I know. There's the talk here about the two separate rules of the two judicial systems, these two separate systems. And it isn't, while it so often does fall Republican versus Democrat, it is them versus us. It is elites versus regular people at the same time. You would never get away with what Hunter Biden has gotten away with. You would never get away with what the ghostwriter who destroyed some of the evidence regarding Joe Biden got away with. You would never get away with what Joe Biden has gotten away with. But of course, and this is also part of Matt Gaetz's questioning here, Joe Biden is senile, which apparently is a get-out-of-jail-free card.
February 8th, the White House question, Mr. President, why did you share classified information with your ghostwriter? The president, I did not share classified information. I did not share it. I guarantee I did not. That's not true, is it, Mr. Hur?
That is inconsistent with the findings based on the evidence in my report.
Yeah, so it's a lie. It's just what regular people would say, right? Yeah, all right. So the next one. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. That wasn't true either, was it?
That was inconsistent with the findings of our investigation.
Another lie, people might say, right? Because what you put in your report was among the places Mr. Biden's lawyers found classified documents in the garage was a damaged open box. So here's what I'm understanding, right? As Mr. Armstrong laid out, you find in your report that the elements of a federal criminal violation are met. But then you apply this senile cooperator theory that because Joe Biden cooperated and the elevator doesn't go to the top floor, you don't think you get a conviction. And I actually think you get to the right answer in that. I don't think Biden should have been charged. Don't think Trump should have been charged. But under the senile cooperator theory, isn't it frustrating that Biden continues to go out and lie about the basic facts of the report that lay out a federal criminal violation.
Congressman, I need to disagree with at least one thing that you said, which is that I found that all of the elements were met. One of the elements of the relevant mishandling statute is the intent element, and what my report reflects is my judgment that based on the evidence, I would not be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury that that intent element had been met.
Right, but the reason you have that doubt is the senile cooperator theory, the fact that Joe Biden is so inept in responding that you can't prove the intent, which again, I don't quibble with that conclusion, but it's frustrating to be like, oh, well, this guy's not getting treated the same way as Trump because the elevator's not going to the top floor, so we can't prove intent. While at the same time, Biden goes out there at the White House and says, well, you know, he just blatantly lies. And what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not Biden's lying because he's still so senile, he hasn't read your report, or whether it's a little craftier and a little more devious and perhaps a little more intentional than we might otherwise think.
And again, this is Matt Gaetz. I think one of the reasons that he is well-liked and one of the reasons I appreciate him when it comes to his line of questioning is these sort of real obvious questions that most of us have when and it's because it is so obvious. And it is this dual system of justice in which it's pretty funny because Democrats try and claim that there is no dual justice or no dual justice system. But then at the same time they try to compare Trump's behavior to Biden's as if they're somehow the same, while then claiming that Biden didn't do anything wrong. Which, of course, then, if they're being consistent, means that Trump didn't do anything wrong, which, of course, they say he did do something wrong. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, Avis, the car rental company. They've got a program for everybody out there for those emergencies that seem to pop up from time to time. They have their daily rental program. For those weekend getaways and those road trips, they have their short-term rental program. And Avis, they also just launched a brand new long-term rental program. Now, this long-term rental program, this is a great option for those of you who are looking to purchase a vehicle in the near future, but you want to test drive multiple vehicles for an extended period of time before you actually go ahead and make that commitment. With the long-term rental program, you don't have to worry about vehicle maintenance. You don't have to worry about taxes or trips to the DMV. And the best part about the long-term rental program is if you get into a vehicle and you realize it's just not working out for you, you can swap out vehicles every couple of months if you wish to do so. Now, if you want any information on any of those programs that I mentioned earlier, just swing by the Avis store. It's located right here in Springfield off of Fort and Sunshine. Make sure to speak to Lauren. And of course, you can find all of that contact information for Avis under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
Don't forget KSGF.com. You can update your app from there if you haven't updated it. I mean, most all of you have, but I did get a text message this morning. Someone's like, oh, the streaming hasn't worked for weeks. And, they just apparently probably had not updated the app. So if you're streaming, if you haven't since the end of last year streamed from the app and you try and it's not working, it's because it is an updated app. You can go to your marketplace to get that update. Plus, Godfather's Pizza Night with KSGF. Also, Biden's Best Moment Bracket. That's sponsored by Pyramid Roofing Company. And you can see the latest video of Nick and Cole's Fido friends with Southwest Humane Society and the latest dog that is needing a family home. The video there at ksgf.com. It's just scroll down a little bit on the right-hand side of the page. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunshine, a high near 78 today. A 30% chance of showers and storms overnight tonight, 61 for a low. 70% chance of showers throughout the day tomorrow, high near 77. Mostly cloudy Friday with a high near 58. State Senator Eigel joins us this morning. I know it's been several days, but I'm curious if you watched the State of the Union and your thoughts of it, and then any of the hearings yesterday. I know you're very busy and doing your own job and everything, but I'm sure you perhaps caught glimpses and clips. And your thoughts on either or both of those.
Well, good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me. And yes, I did. I kept telling myself I wasn't going to watch the State of the Union, but then I ended up watching the State of the Union, and I got to tell you, even though I had low expectations of President Biden, he managed not to even reach those expectations when probably what was one of the most divisive speeches I've ever heard from a president of the United States. Joe Biden went in there and with it a ton of leftist, liberal ideas, everything from expanding government, increasing taxes, to you name it. It was. If you're a Democrat and you like liberal policies that are kind of driving this country into the ground, you probably really liked what you had to hear from President Biden. If you're a Republican, if you're a conservative like me, you probably were very disappointed. So I don't think that speech was going to do anything to bring the country back together. There wasn't a single policy issue that I heard that he talked about that I felt like I could potentially get behind. So big disappointment. It just reinforces how important 2024 is.
I know this isn't why you or why we scheduled to have you on, but it is just an amazing thing if you think about it, aside from the fact that they've taken us to a country where the political power attempts to imprison political opposition and their supporters. But that yesterday, essentially, Biden getting enough delegates in order to be the nominee. At the same time, I mean, this is a guy that I don't believe they will have any debates. I think that there's only one more event that they think they have to get him through that is large scale, and that is the Democratic National Convention. The State of the Union was the other one this year, and the polling numbers show that not only did he not get a bump, but he lost a little in terms of approval ratings, while Trump gained a little. I mean, it was very, very nominal, but still certainly didn't go in the direction Biden wanted. It's just they nominate a guy that I think they all recognize that at this point they're very frustrated because it seems like there's absolutely nothing that they can do to move the needle for them. And it's just so, I don't know, telling about the personality traits or the culture of the Democrat Party that they would go ahead and nominate that guy anyway.
Yeah, well, the biggest reason the Democrats aren't moving the dial nationally is because the ideas that they have about how they would propose to run the country aren't being bought into. I mean, here's a party that's built on ideas like defunding the police, ideas like transing kids and mutilating children. They have they're surrounded by a culture of death. Which has no respect for the sanctity of life. I mean, look at where the Democratic Party is in the state of Missouri. They have almost been completely removed from relevance at the statewide level because so many folks realize that their message of how they would run things would really drive the state, would drive the country into the ground. And, whether it's Joe Biden or anybody else, the message is still just as bad no matter who's saying it. So the Democratic Party today is absolutely fundamentally different from even the Democratic Party of 30 or 40 years ago, and has gotten to the point to where the things that they stand for, which is the downfall of our republic, I mean, that's what it is. Is not being bought into, and they're going to continue to recede into irrelevancy at the national level. So, the ideas are bad. It takes a lot of money in the first place for the Democrats to sell the bad ideas that they're trying to put out, and right now America is just not buying it.
There is legislation that you all are dealing with in Jeff City that is dealing with illegal immigration. Of course, this is something that we're hearing more and more. All states are border states. And we've got, at the same time now Democrats are pretending as if, not only do they care about border security, but it's the Republicans' fault that the border isn't secure. So what is this legislation? What can be done on a state level?
Yeah, great question. So that's a good transition. Of course, we have the invasion that's going on down at the southern border that was precipitated by President Joe Biden. The federal government is not doing anything to get illegal immigration under control, even though that's one of their key responsibilities from Washington, D.C. So I actually have filed legislation, and we heard it in committee this week, an immigration bill here in the state of Missouri that would actually make it a state-level crime to be in this state illegally and empower the governor and our law enforcement to start to detain individuals who are here illegally and deport them from the borders of this state. So what I would do, I've been going around, I've been talking about this issue. We have between about 50,000 and 70,000 illegal immigrants in the state of Missouri right now that are costing our community statewide billions of dollars. When I talk about getting rid of things like personal property tax and some of the other tax burden, I think probably a pretty good place to start is that maybe I'm envisioning a Missouri where we don't have to pay for all these illegal immigrants that are costing our state billions of dollars in the first place. So this legislation would allow for that. If I'm the governor of this state, on my first day of being the governor and in Nigel administration, we're going to declare an invasion under Article 4 of the Missouri Constitution, and I'm going to be directing the Highway Patrol, the sheriffs of this state, and the National Guard to detain and deport people who are here illegally. So I intend to be very aggressive about this, and it's going to be a whole different tune than from what folks are used to hearing from Joe Biden nationally, and it breaks my heart to say this, from what we're even seeing from our own governor here within the borders of the state of Missouri now.
It seemed to have come and gone, but this deal with the commuting of the sentence of Andy Reid's son and the drunk driving thing, and it popped up, and then there was condemnation across the board, and then it just went away. And I was told that's probably what would happen. I think a lot of people perceived it as favoritism and so forth, and because it is a unique situation, and I guess ironically, because it has seemed to go away. I'm just interested in what people think about this, and I didn't know if you had any thoughts on it.
Well, I've talked about this publicly. I don't know what possessed Governor Parson to commute or shorten a sentence of a guy that is guilty of drinking and driving, and as a result of that, ended up critically injuring a 5-year-old girl. When I was actually asked by the media in the days following that, what guiding principles would a Eigel administration have when it comes to commuting sentences? And I got to be honest with you, that the guiding principle is that people who commit crimes should have to serve out their terms. Should have to pay their debt to society. So I can tell you, when I get into office, I'm not going to be looking for reasons to let criminals out of jail early, much less well-connected criminals who are maybe well known in the public because of their affiliation with a popular sports team, which is precisely what happened in this case. I think that this is Nick, I've never been shy about criticizing Governor Parson when I felt he was wrong. Well, he's wrong on this, and we should say so. And I can tell you, you're not going to be seeing those kind of mistakes from an Eigel administration when I'm the governor of the state.
It's just such a unnecessary stain on the governorship and on his administration. It's a real shame. I've asked you this before. We're talking with Senator Eigel, who is, of course, running for the Republican nomination. That vote will come up in August to be governor of Missouri. And I've asked this before, but I'll ask it again because oftentimes people, they don't necessarily hear all of the interviews. They watch, they hear the ads, they see the ads, and Republicans, no matter where they fall on the spectrum of left wing, right wing, they all say they're the most conservative. And the question that people rhetorically ask is, yeah, but how do we really know? They all say that. So what do you say to those people?
Well, I'll tell you, I would say that if you look at the, really the third-party organizations around this country that make a living grading the voting records of state legislators, they all fundamentally say the same thing about my voting record and who I've been in office for the past 7 years, and that is that I am I am the most conservative base Republican in the Missouri Senate right now. My voting record indicates that I'm more in line with the GOP platform that all of us said that we were going to support when we were nominated by the party than any of my other colleagues. In fact, going back to 2010, I am the second most conservative Republican to ever serve, second most conservative senator to serve in the Missouri Senate, going back to 2010 when many of these scorecards were started to be tracked. And the only senator that was actually more conservative than I was our current congressman down there in Southwest Missouri. That's Eric Burleson. He's the only one. So I still got a little bit of work to do, but I'm fond of saying that I have been exactly who I promised I would be in campaign season, not because I'm saying so on a campaign ad or a mailer or a television commercial, but because my voting record says that. Unlike some of the other folks that are running for this position of governor, I've never voted for a giant tax increase. I've been at the forefront of the fight to protect Missouri farmland from being sold overseas. And I got to tell you, I'm the anti-establishment candidate in this race. That's why everybody down in Jefferson City, in those hallways of power, in that bubble, they dislike a guy like me. I'm probably one of the most disliked guys in the hallways of Jefferson City because I've been exactly who I promised I would be, and I'm going to continue to do that. So that is a very fundamental, legitimate question, and I think as folks continue to ask that, they're going to, I believe they're going to like what they hear in this Republican primary.
Bill Eigel, Senator Bill Eigel, also running for governor of Missouri. Appreciate your time this morning. I know we'll be talking to you again before August and perhaps after that as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Have a great morning, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, you bet. Talk to you soon. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. We are on YouTube Live. Sponsored by Springfield Wraps, designer of the KSGF studio. Couple of different reports here about the level of toxicity in Biden world. One advanced team, the other within Jill Biden's staff. Politico, Biden's advanced team full of turmoil and toxicity. John Sexton writing, as if President Biden didn't have enough problems, Politico reports this morning that Biden's advanced team, the team tasked with handling the details of his travel, is full of unhappy people. The situation became enough of a problem that an investigation was launched last year to look into claims of harassment. The culture within the office has gotten so bad that the White House counsel's office opened an investigation according to 3 people who were contacted last fall by the office for interviews. This is from Politico. Specifically, they said, investigators looked into complaints of verbal harassment by Ian Mullall, the former associate director of presidential advance. Mullall resigned March 1st after a month-long investigation, according to multiple people familiar with the situation. Bree Moore, the former director of press advance, also resigned within the past few weeks following complaints from the press corps of the White House about her behavior, several people familiar with the office said. The White House's HR team opened an investigation into Mullall's conduct about a year ago, which led to him getting management training and an executive coach, according to a person familiar with the situation. Eventually, the counsel's office decided to investigate him after additional complaints were made before he was put on paid administrative leave and then resigned, the person said. Mullall, who did advance for Biden's 2020 campaign and joined the White House early on in the presidency, would threaten staffers that he would, quote, ruin your life when mistakes were made, and regularly called junior staffers pieces of blank and worthless, according to 2 of the people who witnessed his actions. He would also demand interns run personal errands like picking up his dry cleaning. Now, this doesn't surprise me for a number of reasons, because what you have is a combination of personality traits that is synonymous with the culture of people that are left-wing. Number one, you have this culture in which people are put in positions in which they have no business being. You may have seen oftentimes little video memes, and it's labeled, when I lie on my resume, and it'll be like a dog that's supposed to be herding cattle, and they just, it's just a complete train wreck. It is somebody, an animal or a person, that is hilariously crafting some sort of disaster in some sort of setting, and it's when I lie on my resume. Look at this administration. It is filled with people who, I don't think they had to lie on their resume, but these are people who do not believe in putting other people in positions of authority that have any merit whatsoever. Yeah, they had to check a box, right. Particularly those who are out there in the public eye. Pete Buttigieg, if he were heterosexual, no one would even know his name. Outside of that town in Indiana in which he was a train wreck of a mayor. That is the only reason, because he is a homosexual. Kamala Harris. Biden even said that he was going to eliminate all white women or white people from the pool of individuals in which he was going to choose. He specifically said, I'm going to pick a woman because she is black and a woman. And so what do we see? You get Kamala Harris. I think when it comes to a lot of these jobs that aren't necessarily high profile, to some degree, you do have the DEI component involved. You got the wokeness involved. But a lot of it is just, kids of donors. These are people who do not have a job because they're good at the job. This is a world. Their ideology is one that believes that hiring people based off of merit is a racist white privilege thing. So they're opposed to it. So you have a culture in which people are put in positions of authority or responsibility. You combine that with a sense of total entitlement and this belief that you are the center of the universe, which is something that afflicts people, under the age of 40, under the age of 30, a bit more. But people who are under that age and are politically on the left, they definitely are infected with that disability, if you will, that emotional disability. So you take people that are essentially spoiled, entitled brats, you put them in positions of responsibility and authority in which they have absolutely no business being there because they can't do the job. And this is why you get these stories. This is why you get reports of interns that are coordinating to send out mass emails demanding the White House call for a ceasefire. This is why you have high turnover in Kamala Harris's office. This is why you get stories in Politico about Biden's advance team being full of turmoil and toxicity. They're a bunch of spoiled, entitled brats that have absolutely no business being in the positions that they're in. In line with that, former top Biden aide confirms report of White House officials allegedly bullying, sexual harassment of staffers. The report actions of a top White House official include the allegations of longtime bullying and sexual harassment of staffers are accurate. A former top Biden aide told Fox News Digital, who said the claim should trigger an internal investigation. By the way, this is not the advance team. This is a whole different division. The New York Post reported yesterday that First Lady Jill Biden's top aide, Anthony Bernal, who is openly gay, has a history of questionable work conduct, but is deemed untouchable because she views him as her work husband. According to the reports, he's been known to speculate on the penis size of staffers in a move one of the publication sources believed was to make people uncomfortable and gain the upper hand. The former Biden aide said it lines up with everything I experienced working there. This reminds me of the virtue signaling in the first days of the Biden administration in which he did a Zoom call with new staffers, that being Joe Biden.
But I'm not joking when I say this. If you're ever working with me and I hear you treat another colleague with disrespect, talk down to someone, I promise you I will fire you on the spot. On the spot. No ifs, ands, or buts. Everybody is entitled to be treated with decency and dignity. That's been missing in a big way the last 4 years.
Now, of course, it wasn't just virtue signaling, but it was once again to trash on the previous president. And so, of course, what we've learned is the opposite is true. The closer you are to the Bidens, the more you get away with treating people like trash, denying them their dignity, and you become known as, quote, untouchable, according to sources within the White House. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Well, rain, it is in the forecast for the next couple of days, so it is important to keep an eye on your roof. Make sure that your gutters are working properly. Make sure that there is no staining on your ceiling. Watch for missing shingles, drips, or even those full-blown leaks. And if an issue does pop up, call Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, from residential roofing to commercial roofing, they do it all, and they make that roofing process incredibly simple. They'll come out, they'll do a thorough roof inspection for you. They'll check your gutters, your vents, your flashing, and then they'll get in your attic and they're going to make sure that your decking is up to par as well. Now, I had the Pyramid team install my roof almost 3 years ago, and it's still growing strong. I couldn't be happier with the work that they did at my home, and I do know if anything ever does pop up, Josh and his team, they're going to get me taken care of, and not only will they take care of me, but you as well. So if it is time for a roof repair or a roof replacement, go ahead and give the Pyramid team a call today. You can find all of that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, another hour ahead. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. And welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. The DNC taunting Laura Trump and RNC after mass firings. Democratic National Committee Chairman Jamie Harrison mocked the RNC after it laid off dozens of staffers. Harrison spoke on the Media Touch podcast, which he appeared on last week to mock Laura Trump's election as co-chairwoman. This time he mocked the RNC and Trump over Monday's mass firing and other alleged troubles. Harrison said, quote, "Hey, listen, as they say, the RNC is down bad. They are in financial disarray. They're dealing with a mass purge of staffing. Just a few months before the election, I hear almost a third of the staffers at the RNC are being laid off, and they're on one of the worst losing streaks we've seen in modern party politics in the history of this nation. So, you know, they're taking out lines of credit, laying off staff. They can't even afford to spend money on their races down ballot. But this is a good thing. They're paying Donald Trump's legal bills. So, as I've said to you earlier, man, go, Laura, go, girl. You're doing it. You're knocking it out of the park. Keep doing it." Now, a couple of things about this. Not that this is a podcast that has any sort of real impact. But number one, this really does a great job of defining the difference in approach from the establishment versus Trump. The RNC has not been producing. This is absolutely correct. For whatever reason, has not been producing, not working. So Trump, once it became clear he was going to get the nominee, utilized his position within the party to start making changes. Big changes. Why? Because things were not working. This included getting rid of the head of the RNC and putting in people who immediately begin to take action, meaningful action. Now, will this meaningful action turn things around for the RNC? Will the meaningful change begin to improve the results from the RNC? I don't know. But what I do know is without massive change, you would not get a change in outcome. This is the difference, though, in the approach between Donald Trump versus the establishment and the elite. They're mocking exactly what needs to be done. But because with the elite, you just continue to do the same thing over and over again, regardless of the results. Now, they aren't off point in mocking the RNC because of recent results. But then it's just such a contradiction to what makes sense and common sense, which I suppose to a large degree is the point, but then making fun of Laura because she comes in and begins making changes like, "Oh, wow, you're doing a great job." So what, is she supposed to continue to do the same thing over and over again that has been done? The whole point in making, and you know, this also demonstrates a lack of understanding in the way Trump does things. Whereas, we talked about this a little bit earlier, whenever, generally speaking, the establishment, which sometimes is Republican establishment as well, when they replace people, it isn't because whomever is in there now is doing a bad job, so we need someone who is going to do it differently. It's just because, well, those aren't our people, these are. When Trump makes replacements, it's because you're doing it in a way that is not providing or producing the results I want, so I'm going to bring in someone else who's going to do things differently to see if that works. And if it doesn't, then I'll bring someone else in until I find someone that produces the results, because it's about results. And the fact that here you have the establishment mocking the RNC, which again, fair game, but then mocking the changes, mocking the fact that Laura Trump is coming in and making these changes, demonstrates a completely different understanding of how you make things successfully run. But when results don't matter, All that matters is power and influence and plugging your people into positions, regardless of whether or not they actually can produce results. This is your mindset. And this is part of the problem with culturally, it is a problem when it comes to Washington, D.C. or state capitals. It's that results don't matter. You know what? Here's what it reminds me of. The show I've watched a couple of times. If you've never seen it before, you're probably somewhat familiar with it. It was not Kitchen Nightmare, but I always forget the name of it. It's the one with Gordon Ramsay where people would reach out.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking
about.
about.
Yeah, people would reach out. I don't think it's Kitchen. No. What is it called? You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It's where people, they have a restaurant. They're always locally owned. And then somebody, a manager or an owner, would send in and say, we are in real trouble. We're not going to be able to keep it open. We need help. We got to have help. And so Gordon Ramsay would come in. He'd observe what they're doing. And then, based on his observations, he would identify the things that they're doing that are harming them and say, all right, here are the changes that are going to be made. Inevitably. There would be people that would pitch a fit. We can't do it that way because that's not the way we do it. And oftentimes, the people that would be the loudest critics of making a, quote, change were the ones who requested his help to begin with. Not realizing that, okay, you recognize that what you're doing isn't working. You reach out to someone to help. Then when they come in to help, you say, we can't do it because we have to continue to do it the way that has proven not to work. And that is how the establishment behaves. We've always done it this way. We can't change. And so when they see an RNC that's in shambles, and then Trump, a person who built his career off pivoting when pivoting is necessary in order to try a different plan, to try and have a different outcome, which sometimes worked, sometimes didn't work. So he puts his people in, they begin to do it, and the elite mock it. Because, of course, the most intelligent elites in Washington, D.C. understand that when you're failing, you're just supposed to keep doing it over and over and over again. In fact, do more of it. More money, more money, more money. There's another aspect of this I want to talk about, and he makes the claim that the RNC, part of their problem is that they are paying Trump's legal fees. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, largely because so much of this is fungible. And there are reports all over the place. The RNC is, the RNC isn't. Oh, Trump was doing this so that the RNC, he could have control over it and force them to pay his campaign or his legal bills. Then the campaign had come out at some point, and it seemed as if they were kind of offering this, and the campaign said, no, we won't allow you to do it. So I have no idea. But I want to give you some thoughts on why, if the RNC did decide to do it, I think it's perfectly warranted. First, the latest news update. First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10. Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny 78 today. Slight chance of overnight showers, storms. Low of 61. 70% chance of showers throughout the day tomorrow. High of 77. 58 and mostly cloudy on Friday. Along with Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Looking for a new gun shop? Quick Draw Gun in Monette. Brad and his team down there, they are just down to earth, and they are always ready to help you, whether you are looking to buy, sell, or maybe you just have questions. That is what makes them a great place to purchase your first ever firearm if you are looking to buy. And they also have hundreds of accessories to choose from as well. They have a great selection on holsters. For my ladies out there, they have concealed carry purses, tons of options to choose from, and they also do custom Cerakoting and laser engraving, so you can really make that new purchase custom for you. Now, they also offer a discount for our first responders and our military back there. If it's time to add to that firearm collection, Quick Draw Gun in Monette is the place to go. They're easy to find. They are right behind the Taco Bell in Monette. And of course, if you need their phone number or their actual physical address, you can find all of that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I was referencing the Gordon Ramsay show, and there was the UK version, which was Hell's Kitchen, and then the US version was Kitchen Nightmares. Is what it was called. Those shows, I know people watch them for a number of reasons. Anytime, and I'm not big into reality TV shows, but when I do watch them, for me, it's more just getting, just observing human nature. And you find people fall into certain categories, and there are these patterns that the vast majority of people, as human beings, we fall into. And I was referencing on the show and the way that people in the elites behave whenever something is not working. The voters in these major cities are a perfect example. Chicago, an example. Whenever they get fed up because things aren't working and they decide, okay, we're going to choose someone else, they never choose someone else that is actually going to do anything differently. They just put a different person in there, because they're not comfortable with the idea of actually changing anything. They just want to continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. It's the same thing with the elite in Washington, D.C. I mean, look at the Middle East. Perfect example. Administration after administration after administration after administration, particularly when it comes to the Palestinians and the Israelis and Middle East peace as a whole, and this idea that the only way that there would ever be peace in the Middle East is to get Palestinians, whomever's in charge at the time, along with the Israelis, to come up with some sort of peace deal, and that was the only way that you could ever get peace to spread in the Middle East. And so it was done over and over and over and over and over again. Now, Trump's approach, okay, we'll give that a shot. Brokered a peace deal. Palestinians said, no, we don't like it. So Trump said, okay, we're going to try something different. Instead of trying to do the same thing over and over again. We'll just cut the Palestinians out of it. John Kerry, former Secretary of State at the time, was asked about this in an interview, or he was talking, I don't know if he was asked directly about it, but he mocked certain people who believed that you could do it differently. And he said, mark my words, there will never be any peace deals in the Middle East without going through the Palestinians. Because that's the only way. You just have to do the same thing over and over again. What did Trump do? The opposite. And it worked. Abraham Accords. 1 country, 2 country, 3 country, on the way to 4. Saudi Arabia was next in line to sign a peace deal with Israel. But that's not how you're supposed to do it. When Trump was having a difficult time getting Mexico to stop facilitating the invasion of illegals into the United States, many of which, or perhaps even most at the time, weren't even from Mexico. But the reason that Mexico was facilitating the illegal entry into the United States is because they didn't want them in Mexico. They were coming up across the southern border of Mexico. Mexico, remember all the trains and everything? Those weren't Mexicans. Those were people south of the Mexican border that Mexico didn't want. They didn't want the illegals, so we're going to help you get up there. So Trump eventually said, oh, you know those plants that you plan on getting built down there? All those jobs, guess what? I'll use executive action to make sure it doesn't happen. Within 24 hours, the president of Mexico was calling the White House saying, what can be done? What do you want us to do? Trump said, put your troops on your border, and they did it. This was one of the single most instrumental steps that was taken. Nancy Pelosi acknowledged that it worked, but criticized the way of doing it because that's not how you're supposed to deal with our partners. It didn't matter that it worked. That's not how we do things. Now, this all came up because there was a podcast in which the chairman of the Democratic National Committee was mocking the RNC because of how ineffective they've been, which is fair game. But then the fact that Laura Trump and Trump's new people that are taking over the RNC are cleaning house, and then they're mocking that when that's exactly what needs to happen. And so I was pointing out that this is the difference between the Trump approach and the approach of successful people versus the elites, okay? But one of the references that was made in there that part of the reason that the RNC is having problems financially is because they're paying Trump's legal bills. Now, I don't know how much they are, how much they're not. I don't know. But why not? First off, it's fungible, right? In the world of politics, we're talking about fungible dollars here. So let's say, for example, Trump has a certain amount of money, but then 40% of that money he loses because he has to fight off legal fees. So that's 40% less that he is able to pony up for campaign reasons. Well, the RNC may then have to make up for that. So whether it is a direct payment of the legal bills so that the Trump campaign itself buys the ads, or the Trump campaign is paying the legal bills, or his personal accounts, which again, if he's going to put money into the campaign, it's all very fungible. So it really ultimately is irrelevant where the money's coming from, because any entity, be it Trump personally, Trump businesses, Trump campaign, or the RNC that pays the legal bills, that's going to free up money that goes to the campaign. And anyone who's, not paying legal bills, they're going to be making up for the money lost that are paying the legal bills. So it's irrelevant. But here's the way I look at it. If part of the reason that the RNC or the Trump campaign or anyone raises money is to help a Republican get elected president, and if helping offset some of those dollars is going to help accomplish that, why would you not do it? Because let's be honest, look how much of our tax dollars that Democrats are using for the campaign. And by that, I mean trying to destroy him, trying to throw him in prison, trying to drain him of money, trying to drain his campaign of money, trying to, and successfully so, keep him off the campaign trail. Those are all dollars being spent on, that is for the campaign. That is for the Biden campaign to help Biden get reelected. Now, the difference is the dollars, whether it's RNC dollars, Trump 2024 dollars, Trump personal dollars, Trump business world dollars, those are all private dollars that have either been earned or donated. The dollars that the Democrats are using in the election to try and get Trump to make sure he isn't reelected, those are not earned dollars. Those are not donated dollars. Those are dollars that are taken out of your paycheck and my paycheck. So what we have here, once again, is a world in which there are two sets of rules. The rules are Democrats can use whatever money they want in order to try and help Biden get reelected, including money that is taken from you out of your paycheck against your will. But Donald Trump and Republicans aren't allowed to use money to try and get him elected that is either donated or earned in the private sector. So this is why I understand how, and they throw it out there to make it seem like, oh, here Trump's taking advantage. You know, it's not even his money. He's using other people's money in order to pay his defense. The point of those dollars is to get him elected. And if fighting against the Democrats using tax dollars to try to get Biden elected means that Trump uses what are fungible anyhow dollars whose sole purpose is to get him elected, that seems to make sense to me. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. As you may have seen, there's kind of some craziness going on in Haiti. President there resigned. You got this nut job named Barbecue that is essentially running the country now. He's a sort of gang drug lord, crazy guy. We've got to get a traffic update, but I want to fill you in on this for a couple of different reasons. One of which, once again, we're watching private citizens and members of Congress evacuating Americans because the Biden administration is just leaving them stranded. Incidentally, Florida is on understandable notice that they may be dealing with refugees at some given point. When we hear about political asylum, you know, these asylum seekers, this is an area in which that is legitimately meant. Everyone under the sun, they act as if the Biden administration that political asylum means anyone who just wants to come here. Oh, you apply for asylum? Oh, because life is going to be better for you here? That's a legit reason. That's not what asylum was set up for. Asylum was set up for people who, if they do not flee their country, then in all likelihood they will be murdered. Murdered by the government, murdered by people in the government, murdered by the gangs that are running the government, whether it's for political reasons, religious reasons, or just reasons because they're psychopaths. It is meant for people who, if they don't leave, in all likelihood, they will be killed. And so this is a legitimate potential asylum-seeking situation as opposed to what Democrats have turned asylum into, and that is just anyone who wants to come here, for a, quote, better life. Let's do traffic. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny today, high near 78. Hear how I kind of posted that there? That's my days of being a DJ. 78 today, 30% chance of showers, storms tonight, overnight, that is, low around 61. 70% chance of showers throughout the day tomorrow, high near 77. Cooler Friday. Mostly cloudy with a high near 58. Wilder RV, if you are already an RVer and you haven't gotten out yet, it's getting that time of year. Maybe you have a benchmark, Memorial Day. That's when you get it out, whether you're going to local, Table Rock, Truman Lake. I'm going to head over just outside of Lebanon, Bennett Springs, wherever it's going to be, or all the way out to Colorado. You want to make sure that it is ready. You got to have these annual updates. You're like, I keep it in storage, keeps away from the weather, it's fine. System check, slide out maintenance service, wheel pack, spring maintenance package. Wilder RV has everything that you need in order to make sure you're ready. Don't think that you don't need to have that annual routine checkup and maintenance just because you have it indoor storage, okay? I mean, after all, if you use it, you're out in the elements every so often anyhow. Wilder RV, it is just a short drive. And I say short drive because it is so worth it. Just a bit over an hour north of Springfield on 13 to Clinton. Wilder RV, also online, wilderrv.com. And you can find them at ksgf.com, Nick's endorsements. Representative Corey Mills, Republican Florida, helped rescue a group of Americans from Haiti, marking the third rescue of U.S. citizens during a foreign crisis under the Biden administration. And actually, this is the fourth, and we'll get to that in a moment, because one of these, for whatever reason, has just remained unrecognized, and that was the leaving behind of Americans in Sudan. But we'll get to that in a moment. Mills told Fox News Digital, quote, "I am proud to report that my team and I were successful in evacuating and rescuing a trapped and at-risk group of Americans from Have Faith Orphanage in Haiti last night. The mission reiterates a disturbing reality. Under Biden's leadership, American lives are continually jeopardized. I've led missions to rescue Americans multiple times when Joe Biden has deserted them." Noting there's a clear pattern of abandonment. He cited his rescue missions in Afghanistan following the U.S. military withdrawal in 2021 and the rescue of Americans from Israel in late 2023. Quote, "Yet again, this group was left behind by Biden and the State Department after requesting their help in country." There's another story. This is from Stripes.com. "Trying to get our daddy home. U.S. has no immediate plans to rescue Americans, including Marine vet trapped in Haiti." So no plans as usual. From Washington, in Stripes, defense officials announced yesterday that the U.S. does not plan to deploy troops to Haiti and has no immediate plans to rescue Americans trapped by gang violence in the country, including a former Marine who served in Vietnam. There has not been a government request to evacuate other U.S. civilians, said Army General Laura Richardson, commander of U.S. Southern Command, which oversees military operations in Central and South America and the Caribbean. Marines flew into Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, over the weekend to airlift non-essential embassy personnel out of the country. But as for everyone else, like we have seen before under this administration, you probably shouldn't have been there to begin with. And that's the subtle message that gets sent by this administration. Is, hey, we always tell people, just kind of be careful where you go. The lack of rescue missions leave few options for Americans, such as Boyce Young, a 75-year-old Marine veteran from Savannah, Georgia, who traveled to Haiti for humanitarian work and is now stuck as gangs overrun the Caribbean nation. Young arrived in Haiti February 16th, just a couple of weeks before heavily armed gangs took over most of Port-au-Prince and began attacking police stations, prisons, the main airport, seaport, and other state institutions. The violence has led to the release of thousands of inmates, deaths of scores of civilians, and a suspension of flights. It's also threatening the food and water supply as the main port in Port-au-Prince remains closed, stranding dozens of containers with critical goods. Sounds like another future financial venture for the Clinton Foundation. They did such a good time first time around. Republicans on Tuesday assailed Biden administration for failing to initiate an evacuation of civilians not working for the embassy, describing it as another situation in which the U.S. has abandoned its citizens abroad. And this is, I have never seen a country that so consistently tells its citizens, tough on you, sorry, sucks to be you. We're all very familiar with Afghanistan, of course, in which President Biden sat down in an interview, I believe it was George Stephanopoulos, and was asked point blank about Americans and our allies, those who have worked with us, getting out, and Biden promised we would get all of them out. We would not leave until they were all out. It took 2 weeks for that lie to be exposed. There are still missing people, including Americans in Afghanistan. We still have hostages being held in Israel or in Gaza. Isn't it amazing the lack of attention the media gives to this? Once upon a time in this country, if there were hostages being held that were Americans, entire news programs were devoted to it. There were a countdown. It's been this many days. It's been this many days. It's been this many days. Was it Nightline? Ted Koppel? I believe it was Nightline. That whole entire show started because of a hostage crisis. I think it was the Iranian hostage crisis. That's why they built an entire show devoted to covering it, keeping it top of mind, keeping a focus on it. Well, but we don't want Biden to look bad. We don't want to give any voters the wrong impression that he doesn't really know what he's doing. So we'll ignore the betrayal and the abandonment of Americans in Afghanistan. We'll ignore the continued hostage crisis of innocent people, including Americans, by Hamas, while the President of the United States is acting as an ambassador and lobbyist for that very terrorist organization, agreeing to help rebuild their infrastructure. Infrastructure that was destroyed because it was used, that being a port, as a launching point for the terrorist attack. This is part of the State of the Union announcement. By the way, we're going to help Hamas rebuild that. For whatever reason, there was also an evacuation that took place in which Americans were also abandoned under the Biden administration that it just does not pop up on the radar. It doesn't get mentioned, and that was Sudan. And it was, not uncommon, or it seems somewhat in line with what we're seeing with some of these other instances, unstable government, overthrowing of governments. And at the time, the story, AP, why the U.S. evacuation from Sudan left Americans behind. Warring factions trying to seize control of the East African nation of Sudan have plunged the country into chaos, thousands fleeing the capital of Khartoum and nearby battle zones. Some countries, including the U.S., have shuttered their embassies, and many are coordinating daring evacuations of their staffs and other residents in an array of convoy flights and frantic getaway drives. But guess which country decided not to? The United States. The AP at the time writing, over the past week there have been dramatically different responses by various governments as they try to get their citizens and embassy personnel to safety. The U.S. has come under scrutiny for evacuating roughly 70 embassy staff in a helicopter mission by elite SEAL commandos over the weekend, while warning thousands of private American citizens in Sudan there that there's going to be no evacuation for them. Well, that was at least nice to give Americans a heads up that they'd been abandoned. A nice little Dear John note instead of ghosting them. Then, of course, comes what has also become the standard play for the Biden administration is essentially blame Americans for getting stuck there. This, from the AP at the time, the State Department, which has advised U.S. citizens not to travel to Sudan, continue to advise Americans to shelter in place. Most of the estimated 16,000 Americans. See, when I'm talking about this, you're thinking, 20, 30, 40, 16,000 Americans believed to be in Sudan right now are dual U.S. Sudanese nationals, and only a fraction of them have expressed a desire to leave. Now, this is according to the State Department, and that's the same BS that they claimed about Afghanistan. Well, no, those Americans trapped there, they obviously want to stay there. The story went on to notice that while embassy staff was airlifted, and again, this is Sudan that doesn't get mentioned with the listing of other countries in which the Biden administration has left Americans abandoned. The AP noted that while embassy staff was airlifted out, there were no plans to provide similar evacuations for potentially thousands of Americans stuck in Sudan. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said Thursday that while the U.S. is helping other countries coordinate aerial rescue efforts, the administration believes the best and safest way for people to get out is over land. So what you have here is an acknowledgement, and this is par for the course, that we were helping other countries get their citizens out, just not ours. While the U.S. says it's too dangerous to get American citizens out, other countries are proceeding with evacuations of their nationals. France, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, Spain, Holland, Turkey, Japan, South Korea, Jordan, South Africa, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia are among the countries that have been working to evacuate their citizens, as well as citizens from other countries like the United States who have been abandoned by their government. And now we got Haiti. Yet another country in which our administration is like, hey, listen, just so you know, sucks to be you. It is an amazing thing to me to watch, but sadly consistent that we are, as Americans, always the last priority, if we even make that, with this administration. I mean, if you are an illegal from another country, whatever you are, we've seen recently even a murderer, you get protected. Even your feelings get protected from being hurt. We don't want to call you something like illegal, but if you're an American, God forbid a Christian that's doing mission work in one of these other countries, well, we told you it was dangerous. Sucks to be you. This is the fourth country in this administration that on this massive of a level, we see Americans that are just left to their own devices. What a fantastic legacy for this administration. And what a great demonstration of compassion, caring, and love for humanity. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. If you need help buying a house, selling a house, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, she is the best. She's going to do the best for you. I would follow her on, I do follow her on social media. I follow a lot of people on social media that are in the industry, and a lot of times their feeds are populated with, or anytime I see anything pop up, it's a showing. New house, which is great, which is fine. And Emily does that as well. But a majority of her stuff isn't that. It's just helpful hints, little tips, selling, this and that. Or even if you own a home, things that you can do in order to help maintain the value or improve the value of your home. I saw that she recently posted, listen, use me as a resource. I think a lot of times people, especially if they know, they're like, well, I don't want to take advantage. I don't want to bother. It's like having a friend who's a massage therapist. You're like, I don't want to ask for a massage. That's what she does for a living. But Emily Johnson, she encourages and welcomes any questions that you have about buying or selling, about the marketplace, whether it's a call, stop by when she's at Scramblers with us on some Friday mornings, an email, or reach her through social media. That's Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. President Biden set to give $10 billion gift to Iran. It's just, it is unbelievable. President Joe Biden teetering on the precipice of doing another lucrative favor for the authoritarian terrorists supporting the government of Iran. The White House is reportedly set to renew a sanction waiver because, Iran has behaved so well lately. They deserve to have sanctions waived. Got to keep that money flowing to Hamas after all. keep the slow Holocaust on the move. If Biden does, again, offer a sanction waiver, it could unlock up to $10 billion in frozen assets for the regime. The financial boon is supposedly earmarked for humanitarian purposes. However, given the obvious, like Iran and their history, the money is, in all likelihood, going to go towards funding endeavors that are far from humanitarian. And they'll go to what the last revenue sources were going to, and that is to fund the slow Holocaust in Israel at the hands of Hamas and other terrorist organizations. The Biden administration is poised to issue the fresh sanctions waiver for Iran that will grant the country access to upwards of $10 billion in frozen assets, providing Tehran with a, quote, financial lifeline. Well, thank goodness, because we would hate for Iran to have any difficulties. Isn't it great that I suppose at least there's one economy that Joe Biden is concerned with? There's one economy that Joe Biden said, oh, boy, we better make a move that actually improves the economic conditions of the country. I mean, we may not see it here in the United States. In fact, he's out there talking about making it even more expensive to do business in this country by raising taxes even more. So this will give Tehran a financial lifeline as it foments terrorism across the Middle East, this according to a group of GOP lawmakers and anyone who has a brain in their head. In November, shortly after Hamas's attack on Israel, the State Department signed off on a sanction waiver that permitted Iraq to transfer multi-billion-dollar electricity payments to Iran. The waiver, which grants Tehran access to around $10 billion in frozen funds, is set to expire this month unless Joe Biden gives the big wet kiss to Iran so that they can continue to fund the slow Holocaust of the Jews of Israel. Just another fantastically indefensible move by this administration, who, by the way, don't forget, tells us is the single greatest friend to Israel that any president has ever been. All right, well, reports are FK Jr. recently approached NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers and former Minnesota governor and professional wrestler, Jesse Ventura, regarding the possibility of becoming his presidential running mate. So I saw a headline, and it was RFK Jr. eyes NFL quarterback as potential running mate. I knew immediately Aaron Rodgers. And I knew Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers was taking a scientific approach when it came to the vaccine, which, of course, you're not supposed to do. And he, there was a huge fit pitched over him because he didn't just fall in line and say, which arm? Jesse Ventura, I'm guessing that I don't know where he's on the vaccine. Jesse Ventura has kind of made a caricature of himself. I don't think that either of these are going to necessarily help RFK Jr. Because of I don't know. I think going to make, I don't know. Perhaps we'll talk about it tomorrow, but I just don't think it's going to be a help, either of those, for him. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.